G'day legends, I hope that you are having a fantastic Monday and a fantastic start to the week. Wherever you are, looking after yourself, getting some sun, getting some exercise in, it will make you feel better. Now, of course, today we're going to talk about Ukraine and what is going on, and as well as a map update at the end and some vehicles that are long awaited to come into Ukraine. But firstly, where we need to start is that the weather has turned really bad, and we've been waiting for this for a while. You know, of course, it goes in the warmer summer months, dries right out, it's dusty, and then it gets into the mud season, and of course, then into winter. Ukraine can have very, very severe winters as well. And we're going to talk about this, how it will affect it, and how the weather has rolled in over the past day or two. So Crimea has absolutely been hounded overnight by what they're calling up to 150 kilometre-hour winds, which is about 100 miles, or actually 90 miles an hour. And people are saying 8-metre waves as well. And people are saying that this has actually washed away or damaged a lot of the defences on the beach and right on the shoreline as well in Crimea. So let's have a look over a little bit of some of this footage too. So this is on the shoreline down in Crimea. You can see the waves coming in. Of course, the beach sits down here and damaging these buildings, and this bloke gets pretty heck. I don't know the fate of this bloke, but that's a lot of water on top of you, bro. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. So the south of Ukraine has plummeted in temperature and with the snow as well. Of course, we're talking down here in the south of Ukraine. So we have some footage here as well of some of the damage from Ukrainian sources as well. There's an ambulance getting pulled out of the snow, and you can just see how heavy the wind is here as well. Fire truck trying to remove that ambulance, as well as we'll see some soldiers here. And of course, that has caused some damage to infrastructure too. And as a former soldier, you know, I know that weather plays a huge role, not only in defensive, offensive works, but like this, weather plays such a massive thing of even just down to morale, your movements, how things can move on the ground, your heavy vehicles, how infantry can move, it covers up mines, all of this. And these sort of colds as plummets in, people will even freeze to death out there as well, if not properly covered up. And we did see that last year as well. So those winter conditions, we've been waiting for it. Of course, it has arrived over the past couple of weeks, and we do expect to see a lot of movements really slow down from Ukraine and from Russia over the next coming months. An opportunity to refit, refight, but also then an opportunity to target critical infrastructure and maybe try and force someone's hand. And we will talk a little bit about that. As we know, last year, Ukraine did have a relatively warmer winter, and Russia targeted Ukraine's critical infrastructure, primarily in the energy sector. Now, Ukraine for many weeks, many nights was plummeted into cold and darkness, but the energy sector did manage to really keep the lights on for a lot more than a lot of people expected. And as well, people for this winter have prepared with generators, with your battery packs, your lithium battery things and inverters. People are more prepared, but the winter could be more severe as well. And this year going into winter, we do expect to see much of the same, as Ukraine has warned that Russia has been stockpiling drones and missiles for the winter to try and strike, of course, that critical infrastructure. And on Saturday, we did see that Russia launched its largest drone attack on Kyiv using Shahed drones since the start of this war last year. It said that 75 Iranian Shahed drones were fired upon Ukraine, and all but one was intercepted coming through. Now, there are no reports of any deaths, but at least 5 people were injured and several buildings damaged. Now, intercepted drones and missiles are still very deadly due to their debris, and as we have seen before, the air defense can also be very deadly coming back down and misfire in here as well. So we do have some footage from the sun here of these strikes over Kyiv, and of course then the interceptions of these drones. course, a lot of these drones are targeted using, of course, lights, these spotlights here as well, and preferably targeted with a machine gun type system, such as like the Gepard, to save then the air defense rockets, the missiles, for then the missiles coming into Ukraine. So we can see this fire going up here. Now, what people have speculated is Russia trying to bring down the ammunition stores of the air defense using drones first over Kyiv before then launching missile strikes further into winter? We are unsure, but we do expect to see these waves of drones, missiles continuing into Ukraine as well from Russia. You see this from the defense of Ukraine. Overnight, Russia launched a massive terrorist attack against Ukraine. Air defense forces shot down 74 out of 75 Shahid drones, 60 of them over Kyiv. We're proud of our brave defenders. We're grateful to our international partners for their assistance in strengthening our air defense. In response to this, Ukraine has responded with a drone attack into Russia. Now, reports are varying, but they're saying that there were 20 drones fired, and Russia is claiming to have shot down somewhere between 9 and 11, but there are definitely varying reports, and this is some footage from Russia as well. Not as clear as some of the other footage. This is just security camera footage here. And here we see on this high-rise block the damage that has been sustained here as well. And I have a better photograph of that damage here as well from that drone fired in. So of course, drone warfare, not only on the very front lines with your FPV Mavic style drones, but well behind the lines as well. Now, over the last 48 hours, we have seen the first of the M1A1 Abrams tanks arriving in Ukraine. Now, these do have the SA, the situational awareness update, mainly with the thermal imaging and the smoke as well. And here we see in the woodland camo and the Ukrainian camouflage on the M1 tanks, the Abrams here, as well as those really the only two images that we have seen. Now, these did disappointingly arrive late for Ukraine's offensive campaign, and I'm sure that was very disappointing for Ukraine. 31 of these will be going to Ukraine, and these quantities don't really resemble just how much the US could actually send and supply. The US has many thousands of these. Now, what effect will these vehicles really have? Well, these vehicles are very, very good and have a very impressive combat history, but nothing is immune to anti-tank guided munitions, and nothing is a silver bullet. And with these, they're definitely not the most suited tank to the winter and mud environment. They are very, very heavy and very thirsty as well. They use a lot of fuel. Of course, they can use a whole range of fuels, but they are very thirsty. And I guarantee at some point we will see a cope cage on top of this. If we're seeing it on top of Makava 3 and 4s, we're going to see it on top of an Abrams as well. But with the Abrams, it will be very interesting to see how these actually perform in a near-peer conflict with a far greater risk of artillery, planes, helicopters, mines, ATGM, and modern tanks than we've actually seen the Abrams operate in environments before. Of course, they were built for this, but we haven't seen them, in this level of environment. So it will be interesting to see how then they actually perform. But tanks without air support can only ever have a limited effect on the battlefield, as it does lack that critical part of the combined arms, the armoured infantry, artillery, air. That whole warfare comes in as once, and this is where we have seen a lot of the breakdowns from Russia and Ukraine as well for that combined armed movements of armoured vehicles. And I'm sure that America does not want to see the same leopard graveyard that we saw with its main battle tank, of course, being the Abrams. But speaking on the Cope cage. We've seen this down in the Avdiivka industrial zone of a Russian T-80 BV here. We do not need the music at all. Soaking up an FPV drone into its Cope cage. Now, the Cope cage was released as a piss take, but it really works, especially now that we've seen them fitted on other vehicles. We've seen them fitted on the Makavas now. We do know that these actually do work, and this is a bit of footage here that's showing this actually work. Now, this area now here of destroyed industrial zone around Avdiivka is now actually occupied. We're going to show you that on the map in a second. After this hit we see right here, might have been a bit early on the right here. There we go. We see the hit. We see the tank driving away, and then nearing the end of the footage, can see the tank driving off, and then you can see the commander actually sticking his head out of one of the cupolas and checking the damage to the rest of the vehicle. At least that's what it does look like. So we do see then there the effectiveness of those cages against your small drones. Going to look at the MOD update as well. Exceptional Russian air transport movements through November 23 suggest that Russia has likely moved strategic air defense systems from its Baltic coast enclave of Kaliningrad to backfill recent losses on the Ukrainian front. So let's have a look then at where Kaliningrad is here. So it sits right in here between Ukraine and the Baltic states and Belarus here. So of course borders Poland and Lithuania. And this is what people are concerned about with Wagner PMC, is could they push down this gap here and cut off Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania there. Of course, if they did that, they would have been smoked by NATO, but definitely a very tactically important area for Russia to have some enclave of control within wider NATO Europe here as well. But they're moving those into Russia and an air defense on the Ukrainian front. This follows an uptick of losses of SA-21 air defense systems in Russian-occupied Ukraine in late October 23. As its most westerly outpost and bordered on three sides by NATO member states, Russia sees Kaliningrad as one of the most strategically sensitive regions. The fact that the Russian MOD appears willing to accept additional risk here highlights the overstretch the war caused for some of Russia's key modern capabilities. That said, I don't believe that Kaliningrad is at any risk here either. That I just can't see NATO wanting to have an invasion there of Kaliningrad and be the aggressor onto that edge. I just can't see that as well. So moving those air defenses out, realistically, what effect is it going to have for Kaliningrad? Probably not that much. But then we're going to have a look over the maps and see what has changed. Now, it has come out that, of course, we know that up in the northeast, Russia wants to reoccupy Kupiansk, a hub that Ukraine has used for its northeastern defense. Now, the spokesman for Ukraine's ground forces, Volodymyr Fetio, has said the enemy intends to advance to the settlement of Sinkivka in order to develop their further success in the offensive on Kupiansk. So let's have a look here. Of course, this green area is where Russia has occupied previously and Ukraine has pushed them back. The green being older than 2 weeks. But of course, here we have Ukraine in the center, the capital of Kyiv. The red areas occupied since 22 and the purple since 14. So where we're coming is up into here. Of course, this is Kupiansk. And where he's talking about is here in Sinkivka. That Russia want to leapfrog into Sinkivka and eventually get the strategically important Kupiansk. We know this is a hub for Ukraine's eastern or northeastern defense as well up in here. So let's see if we've seen any different changes over the last couple of days. Not really in here. All we saw was lose a little bit of control here, and it does look like Russia gained some more, at least grey zone in around Sinkivka, pushing down into this region. We see a lot of claims in here, but as far as day-to-day movements, what's happening, we don't see that much. Now, up and down the front line, because I've looked at this map previously, there are no changes other than some significant ones, relatively significant for how little gains we do see over the past 12 months of this conflict day to day. We have seen relatively significant gains in Avdiivka by the Russian forces. So, of course, today is the 27th. Let's roll back to the 26th, then to the 24th skips up. And let's have a look here. So this is what Russia have gained in and around this industrial region in the east of Avdiivka, as well as getting some more ground out near Stopove here as well. As we know, Russia is squeezing down on this. So let's have a look over some of this and how it has changed over the past few days. So we're going to have a look at Suryak's maps here. Now, this is what we looked at on day 638, which was last time I spoke to you guys, and then now we're up on day 641. Now, of course, deep state is at day 642, but doesn't show any change between that, so we're going to go with that we are close enough. So this is the most recent one. Situation south of Avdiivka. Russian army advanced north of Promka industrial area and along the H20 road take control over a series of Ukrainian fortifications adjacent to the forest area. So let's zoom in on these regions we're looking at. We see this funny intersection. This is the same intersection here as we do see by down in this region. We do see Russia have got more control out to the west in here as well. And of course, to the north of where we're talking, towards the northeast, that Russia have averted more control. Of course, this is the plant and the industrial area here have gained a lot more area in the forest around here as well. So are squeezing down on Avdiivka. And let's have a look at then what Suryak has to say about this. The situation of Avdiivka front, this was from actually yesterday, so we're going over a couple of days here, but from the north axis, Russian army made a small advances along the tree line adjacent to the coke plant where clashes with Ukrainian army are taking place. Meanwhile, on the southern axis, Russian army took full control over the Promka industrial area as Ukrainian army withdrew from the northern part of this avenue. So here we see Russia made a small advance along near the coke plant and these advances that we spoke about on the map before. Now this actually continues on here. After the capture of the Promka industrial zone, the next objective will be the capture of these quarries and farms from where they can monitor the Ukrainian movements in the forest zone. Precisely, their penetration into the urban zone will continue to be reduced by taking new parts of Yasenovsky Avenue from where to establish fire control over the lower part that divides the city. Simultaneously, the Russian troops will seize the forest zone, reaching the rear of the Ukrainian defences along the H20 in order to achieve the solid control over Donetsk filtration station. However, as previously stated, the Russian advance will be difficult due to the large number of defences in the forest zone, and a collapse of forces is not expected as long as the northern front does not make progress. So, of course, the forest zone, very, very difficult for Russia to push through. A lot of trench build-up, a lot of mines, and of course, once you're in a forest, that it is infantry clearing slows down a lot. But this is what they are talking about, to move in and get control over then the urban zone and the outskirts then of Avdiivka as well. So of course we will see this escalate over the coming weeks and see what comes of this, and if this turns into what we saw of the Bakhmut meat grinder, and it is looking like that. We know Russia has taken very, very large casualties here and has been grinding away, making ground. Very similar, and even a similar time of year that we saw this same thing happen in Bakhmut, with Russia's ultimate success in Bakhmut there as well, taking it, but at huge cost for Ukraine and Russia as well. And I've speculated before that I believe that both Ukraine and Russia were telling the truth and were correct in saying that we are holding Bakhmut. We're pushing on Bakhmut so hard because the amount of other forces were actually killing him, amount of enemies were actually killing. And I think that both sides were killing a lot, but also taking a hell of a lot of wounded, and that did affect the whole of 2023's, both Ukraine's offensive and Russia's defensive and offensive as well. Now, speaking of Bakhmut, we haven't seen any change on the map, but this has come out as well through a Ukrainian military group as well here, and this is translated here. Bakhmut direction. The situation is difficult but stable. Russians advance from crater to crater, accumulating at the front edge. They do not stick out until they get a command and then go on the assault. Many different drones are used, from FPV to large drones of the agricultural type with dropped munitions. They are also small radius electronic warfare on drones. They are attached to the Mavic and jam the communication. They do not have any less shells. They are constantly firing, mostly at the points that they have previously determined. So talking about no shell shortage here, and of course the EW affecting Ukraine's communications. Those FPV, those first-person drones, they're mainly the suicide drones we see come in, and those larger drones, down to even just your Mavics, can drop munitions, but the agricultural ones been dropping multiple types there as well. So, of course, drones are one hell of a thing on the battlefield. But legends, that is it from today. I hope that this was all right. Getting back into the swing of Ukraine and reporting on this, it's been 6 weeks or something, so bear with me. But I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.